and welcome to Made from Humans, How Reality Becomes TV. I'm your host, Andy Dennert, the creator of Reality Blurred and a writer who believes in the power of true stories. Every week I'll take you behind the scenes of reality TV and my writing about it. On today's show, Survivor 50 is coming to a close, and Jeff Probst threw one final twist our way that has me thinking about my love for Survivor. As always, I have recommendations for you, plus we'll start with a quick tidbit about Survivor costumes. Yep, costumes. And if you stick around to the very end, you'll get life advice from reality TV, this time from Sari Fields. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me, wherever you happen to be joining from, whether that's your car or a street as you're walking and listening, or a country halfway around the world like Australia. I added some new privacy-focused stats to my podcast last week so I can have a little better sense of who's listening and where they're coming from and those kinds of things. And I learned that 7% of you who listened to last week's episode were in Australia. So welcome to you. I'd love to know how you found this podcast in Australia, or if you are an American or someone else who traveled to Australia and happened to listen there, I'd love to know that as well. The statistics also showed me that the people who were listening in Australia came primarily from Victoria and New South Wales, with Victoria slightly taking an edge, 3.97% to 3.17% of all listeners. So if you're in one of those places, maybe recruit some friends to try to battle the other. That is, assuming people in Victoria and New South Wales are that competitive and really want to make sure that they have more listeners to Made from Humans. So again, welcome wherever you're listening from. Let's start with Curtain Pull, where I take a quick peek behind the scenes of a show. Today, that's Survivor. As Survivor 50 comes to an end, I just wanted to share one of my favorite tidbits about the production of Survivor. I've written about this. I'll link to it in the show notes. You can find that in the episode details area of your podcast app and click that link and read more. Basically, what you see people wearing on reality TV shows is approved by the production, and that is also true of Survivor. But with Survivor, it's maybe even more detailed a process. Basically, players wear clothes that are chosen for them and sometimes even bought for them by producers. This all happens during pre-production and the quote-unquote casting process, like leading up to finals, after finals. But basically, before anyone heads out to location, they will have their clothes locked down, the ones that they're allowed to wear. And this goes all the way to bathing suits, underwear, etc. They are picking everything for you. So sometimes people are wearing things that we might look at and mock and make fun of, but in fact, those were not their choice. Sometimes, literally, people are just having things purchased for them. The most famous example is John Cochran, who never wore a red sweater vest before he was on Survivor, and now that is what he is known for. So again, kind of a costume. One thing about this that, obviously maybe clothes that people wear aren't that big of a deal. It sort of creates a character, helps us visually keep track of the tribes. But there's more to it than that, especially because of the way that the producers have required people to wear literally underwear, and what they require from men and women has been different, and that's created real problems for women, including UTIs, that they then have to play the game while they're trying to recover from or living through. Sometimes producers will give them fresh clothes, but one player said that they did that only after taking those underwear and stomping them in the dirt to make them look old and used. So sounds really awful. Maybe just a reason to have a little bit of empathy the next time you see a Survivor player wearing something that you might think to yourself, that looks strange, or why are they wearing that? Okay, on to On My Mind, where I share what's bouncing around inside and or preoccupying this little brain of mine. This week, it's something that Jeff Probst said in a big story in Variety about how Survivor has made it to 50 seasons and 26 years on television. Jeff Probst is interviewed in this piece extensively, says a lot of things that we've heard before and some new things. I'm going to quote from him in just a moment, but some quick background, which is that Jeff Probst is the showrunner of Survivor. What this means for him and for Survivor is that he is effectively in charge of the production. He's not only hosting the show, but he is in charge of all the creative decisions, hiring of producers, etc. Of course, he has teams of people who then deal with a lot of this, but it is ultimately his show. Survivor began as Mark Burnett's show, and really he got a lot of the credit in early years, but about 15 years ago, Jeff Probst transitioned into this role, and now Mark Burnett basically has nothing to do with it at all. In fact, when I was on location in 2008 and 2009 for Survivor Gabon, Tocantins, and Samoa, Mark Burnett wasn't even there in Gabon or Brazil when I was there, at least. And he did show up in Samoa, but just kind of like hanging around watching the opening marooning like I was, and clearly was not involved in any of the day-to-day, though Jeff Probst said that, he occasionally called Burnett and talked to him about things. That doesn't even happen anymore. So this is really Jeff Probst's baby. And that might explain why he sometimes sounds a little defensive about criticism of the show. So here's what he said in Variety. This is Jeff Probst. Quote, "It's fascinating to me that a couple of people, most of them either former players or people who will never play, criticize the show and it gets momentum. I tell anyone who wants to listen, if that's your goal to somehow impact our point of view, it will fail. We trust what we're doing. If you think we're going to re-edit because you thought there was too much Zach Brown, you've not been reading interviews with me. I couldn't be more serious. I love Survivor. I love Joy. I love fans. I've also got a backbone. It's going to take more than that to knock me over." If you heard my cat right there just making a little noise of discontent, that's basically the noise that I made in my brain when I read that as well. I don't even know where to start with this, except just to say that it's kind of disappointing. Maybe it's disappointing because it's not how I approach life in general. I mean, starting when I was in high school and got into journalism classes, and then in college when I took my first creative writing class, and never mind in other contexts in my life, I really was in a mode of places where people talked about stuff and then gave feedback about that stuff. And all of that feedback was designed to help improve it. So when my journalism advisor read pieces in my stories, or read my stories for the newspaper, she would give me advice about what I should write or what I should change, or what I should edit, not what I should write. She was really good about not actually telling us what to do, and give me help to make it better. Same, she would look at the layout and be like, oh, this, maybe tweak this or maybe do that. I had so many great teachers in high school and college who really were about helping me figure out things for myself. And they were there to kind of push up against me and push against my ideas without telling me what to think, how to do it, etc. And I so appreciated that. Like, whether we were having like political arguments, I can remember going on a school trip and basically arguing with this faculty member about politics all the time. They were treating me with respect and treating my ideas with respect, but also pushing against them and challenging them and helping me to think about whether I wanted to improve or change or update those ideas based on new information. So that's kind of what I look for in art, in television, in life, is I want to make things better and I want to make my own writing better. So when people offer feedback, I read that and think about it. Sometimes that feedback hurts. Sometimes it's just hurtful. Sometimes it's clearly a sort of person off, like an outlier. That's the word. And sometimes all of a sudden I'll realize that there's a lot of the outliers. And so maybe it's not so much of an outlier, but something I should really pay attention to. And of course, if you're a person who's in the public eye, you cannot just like take every single piece of feedback and then implement it. And I don't think anyone who watches Survivor and criticizes it is expecting Jeff Probst to take every note or thought or comment that we have and do something with it. That's ridiculous. But I do hope that they give it some thought and think about it. And I do think that we've actually seen that. The new era has been kind of a disaster these past 10 seasons or so. And the reason I say that is because while the cast has been really strong and there have been really interesting people and the show has gone more into their personalities and backstories, the editing has done a really poor job of telling us how people actually made it to the end sometimes. And the twists have gotten in the way of people playing the game, so much so that you could actually see players talking on Survivor about how they're not going to do anything because they're expecting twists to come. We've seen this right up through Survivor 50, where, spoiler alert if you didn't see the penultimate episode, Suri Fields was voted out. The episode itself was actually really classic old school Survivor, just challenge, vote, challenge, or challenge, vote, challenge, vote. Yeah, so it's basically 2 back-to-back episodes. But previously, They did a twist where they split a small group up into even tinier groups, and that separated Suri from her ally, Ozzy, and everything went to shit after that. So I blame the twist for getting Suri eliminated, although she ran through that twist and also the aftermath of it the best she possibly could. But essentially, the twist sunk her more than her game sunk her. That's not what I would love to see in Survivor. I watch it for the social strategy, people playing this game with each other and seeing how they can do their best. So the twists in Survivor 50 and Survivor 41 through 50, 49, I guess, those have maybe not gone over so well. And that started in Survivor 41 when they had the absurd twist of a player being able to reverse an entire challenge, which actually irritated players who were right there and told Jeff Probst about that. And to the show's credit, they changed that. The hourglass twist went away. One thing about Survivor is that it films its seasons back to back. So like season 51, I think just got finished filming now in late May, and season 52 will film shortly after that. There's only a couple weeks between them. So if they're looking for feedback from the audience, they're not going to get it until the next year. So it's kind of like the change comes year to year. But what it sounded like from this quote again is that Jeff is just uninterested in thinking that his point of view can be impacted. Again, that's the direct quote. If that's your goal, to somehow impact our point of view, it will fail. That is my point of view always with everything in art, in life, is to talk about it, talk about what I like, talk about what I don't like, talk about how it makes me feel, hear how it makes other people feel, what they liked, what they didn't like, and then hope for it to be better and for it to change. And that's how I want my own work to be, and I want to experience my own work with other people. I exchange chapters of my book in progress with other writers. I go to writing workshops where people give me feedback. I answer every single email I get about, whether it's a typo or a question about something I wrote or just why did you write about this? It made me sad. I want to hear that feedback and I want to engage people with it. So it's strange and kind of sad and annoying and upsetting and frustrating that the person in charge of one of my favorite TV shows of all time is not that way and is uninterested in that point of view. But this got me thinking, it's about something that I said just kind of offhand to one of my close friends, John, who I watched Survivor with for, oh my gosh, I think 15, 18 seasons, something like that. I wrote a piece about it. I will link that in the show notes as well. Basically, just we had this ritual of we'd go out to dinner, maybe go for a walk on the beach with other friends, and then we would watch Survivor, kind of changed based on the days that Survivor moved around. We would talk about the show, talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, etc. And when I was with him and his husband and my husband, we were just all talking about Survivor. And I said something that they were like, "Oh, have you written about this?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And what I said was, Survivor is basically my sports, or my sports team is probably the better metaphor. There's a lot, I think, of teams in sports that have fans who stick with the team regardless of how much they suck. That was my recollection of kind of the Cubs when I was in Chicago, although actual Cubs fans are probably going to be mad at me because maybe I'm getting this wrong, or maybe it was the White Sox or the Bears, or, the Bears were good in the 80s and now they're not. I don't know. I don't pay attention to sports because I pay attention to reality TV. So forgive me the lack of detail for the sports part of the metaphor. The part that I'm interested in is the idea that sports teams and franchises, they change coaches, they change players, they change approaches. Sometimes they have really great teams and coaches and they win. Sometimes they have really great teams and coaches and they lose. Sometimes they're just in a slump period, but fans stick with them. And that's how I feel about Survivor. I'm going to stick with this show. I have stuck with it for every single episode, maybe except I think one, since the summer of 2000. I've written about almost every single episode over the past 10 years at least, when I've been recapping actively, and then a lot more writing about it before that. All of this is like my commitment as a fan of Survivor. but I'm also a fan who cares about the show and its survival and other people loving and wanting to be fans of it too. Like, I want other people to watch it and like it, and I want it to be better for those of us who do watch it and like it. So I'm not going to stop being a person who loves Survivor just because the current coach is not willing to care about our feedback or concern and doesn't have any interest in adjusting. That's his prerogative. It's his show. That's why he makes the millions and I don't. That's okay. And obviously he's going to keep making a show that he thinks is best. And I genuinely do think that he thinks what he's doing is best for the show. That's, as much as I can criticize the choices that he's making, I don't ever deny that he's trying to do it in a way that is benefiting people. So I'm sure in the months, weeks ahead, just like in the months, years past, I will have thoughts about specific choices, specific things about Survivor and about other shows. But this is it. It's like, this is my team. This is my sports team. However long suffering this stretch will be, I'm going to keep with it. I'm going to keep loving it. And I'm going to keep, criticizing it. But also if someone else wants to criticize it and say, is that show still on? I'm going to, give them a verbal punch in the face and be like, of course it is. Show some respect to Survivor, the show that changed all of television in the summer of 2000 by showing networks and Hollywood that real people can be just as interesting and as cinematically edited and presented as fictional people. In fact, more so, because fictional TV and scripted TV in the summer of 2000 kind of sucked. Also, it gave people something to watch in the summer when, if you recall back then, it used to be just all reruns. We don't have that anymore. That's just one of the ways that Survivor has changed TV, and one of the many reasons why I love Survivor and will continue to love it. So I'm going to put on my metaphoric sports cap with the Survivor logo on it right now, and I will keep that on even as I offer things that will hopefully impact the point of view of people in charge at some point. Okay, on to recommendations, where I share things that are bringing joy and entertainment into my life. We're talking about Survivor 50, so I want to throw back and suggest you go watch Survivor Borneo Season 1 from the summer of 2000. You can see it on Paramount+. Pluto had re-aired it and had it on demand and streaming for a while. I'm not sure if it's there now. It might come back. That's free, obviously, whereas Paramount Plus is not. But if you have access to Paramount Plus or another streaming service with Survivor Borneo, whether you've watched it or not, I highly recommend checking it out because it's so fascinating to see the change that occurred between season 1 and season 50. And also what really was there from the beginning, how amazing it is to watch people figure out how to play this game and really just get into defining a genre, while at the same time establishing things that literally haven't changed for Survivor in 50 seasons either. Jeff Probst really did change as a host from season 1 to, 2, 3, kind of found his way into the role, which of course happens. And then of course changed more after that. But it's a great season of television, period. And it's a really good, instructive document to analyze, talk about, and, maybe pull some evidence if you're ever talking about this with friends or showrunners. I also want to, not recommend Traitors Canada because I haven't seen it yet, so I can't really recommend it. But all 3 seasons dropped on Peacock, which is really exciting for those of us who love Traitors. So I'm excited to watch those. I can't quite recommend them yet, even though I know other people have enjoyed them. However, if you like Traitors, maybe check those out. And also I have a show that I definitely can recommend called $1 Million Secret that's on Netflix. Season 2 just finished on Netflix, and it's a series that's very much similar to Traitors in that players are trying to figure out who among them is lying to them. In this case, it's lying about being the quote unquote millionaire, being the person that has the prize money in their possession. But the difference is that on $1 Million Secret, there's lots of game mechanisms that give the players information about who has the money, i.e. who the person is they're trying to figure out and vote out, identify, etc. So there's a lot more game information that plays out. That's not to say that implicit bias and relationships and other things don't still play a role as they do in the Traitors. But one of the things that frustrates me about the Traitors is that often the faithful have no information, no evidence. They're just kind of randomly guessing, maybe based on something that they saw happen that wasn't a real thing, which is that's kind of interesting. Or maybe it's based on like past relationships. It's like, let's get the survivors out. And it's like, well, why? Like maybe they could actually help us find the traitors. Also, the traitors itself doesn't have any reason to get the traitors out early on because the show will keep adding traitors back. Whereas $1 Million Secret makes that clear that, like, of course, someone is always going to have this money. And so it's going to move around the house. And the question is, how can you kind of get rid of it and get it back at the times when you need it? So $1 Million Secret, similar game to Traitors, just more information. Also just a delightful performance, I guess, as host by Peter Serafinowicz. I can spell his name, but I don't know if I can say it. Anyway, he's fantastic. Check out $1 Million Secret on Netflix. Coming next week, we're going to go behind the scenes of Couples Therapy, which started its 5th season last Friday on Showtime and Paramount Plus. You heard me recommend it last week, and now we're going to kind of talk about some of the behind the scenes stuff, and I'm excited to share with you what I learned from its directors. And that is everything for today. Thank you so much for listening. Feel free to send me your feedback, questions, and thoughts. And if you're in a 5-star mood, tap those in your podcast app of choice. Your ratings and reviews really do help me out. So if you can remember to do that when you have a chance, I would appreciate it. Our theme song is Cheery Monday by Kevin MacLeod. And this episode is by me, Andy Dennert, and is copyright 2026 by Reality Blurred, LLC, which is also me. You can find me at realityblurred.com and andydennert.com. I'll leave you today with what's probably Suri Field's last appearance on Survivor, but one of the many moments where she proved that she is absolutely one of the best to ever play this game, even though she has not won and will not win this season. But she knows how to read people and knows how to play this game and offers a little bit of wisdom here that I think we can all take into our normal lives.
Radical. You just breathe.
This is such a daunting task. It seems impossible, and I'm overwhelmed, but Survivor is built to expose you and to build you up and break you down. People wonder, like, why you keep coming back? It's because it gives me, like, gas in the tank to believe in myself.